Mississippi, 1962. They called her just another poor black woman. They never knew she was raising the boy who would one day save hundreds of lives. But before that dream could come true, she would make one final wish. And the question that would haunt her son forever was simple. Would he arrive before it was too late? The summer sun hung low over the endless cotton fields of rural Mississippi. Dust drifted through the air as workers bent beneath the weight of another exhausting day. Among them was Margaret Carter, a 48-year-old African-American widow whose hands were rough from years of picking cotton. Every sunrise began the same way. She tied her faded blue headscarf, whispered a quiet prayer, and walked miles to the plantation fields. The pay was barely enough to survive. Some nights, there was only cornbread and beans. Other nights, there wasn't enough for both of them. On those nights, Margaret always smiled and told her 10-year-old son, David, "I'm not hungry, baby. You eat." David believed her. Only later would he realize. She had gone to bed hungry so he could dream with a full stomach. Life under segregation offered little hope. The local school for black children had broken desks, worn-out textbooks, and leaking ceilings. The white school across town had everything David wished for but was forbidden to enter. Still, every morning Margaret held his hand and reminded him, "They can lock doors, David, but they can't lock your mind." Those words became the foundation of his life. David was different from the other children. Instead of playing after school, he spent hours reading borrowed medical books from the small black church library. His dreams seemed impossible. He wanted to become a doctor. People laughed. "A black doctor from this town? It'll never happen." Margaret never listened. Every insult only strengthened her faith. One cold autumn afternoon, David came home carrying a torn science book someone had thrown away. "Mom, I learned today how the human heart works." Margaret smiled warmly. "And what will you do with that knowledge?" David looked into her tired eyes. "I'm going to become the greatest doctor in America. So no mother has to lose her child because they're poor." Margaret gently placed both hands on his face. "Then promise me one thing." "What?" "When the world finally knows your name, never forget where you came from." David hugged her tightly. "I promise. And I'll build you the biggest house in Mississippi." Margaret laughed through tears. "I don't need a big house. I only need my son." Years passed. The civil rights movement spread across America. New laws slowly opened doors that had been locked for generations. David studied harder than anyone around him. Scholarships carried him to college. College led him to medical school in New York. The day he boarded the northbound bus, Margaret stood at the station holding back her tears. She waved until the bus disappeared beyond the highway. Then she whispered, "Lord, bring him home someday." By 1986, David Carter had become one of New York's most respected heart surgeons. His picture appeared in magazines. Television stations interviewed him. Hospitals competed to hire him. People called him a miracle worker. But success demanded everything. Long surgeries became longer. Vacations disappeared. Phone calls became shorter. Visits home became rare. Margaret never complained. Whenever neighbors asked, "Does your son still visit?" she smiled proudly. "My boy is busy saving lives." She never admitted that every birthday, every Christmas, and every Mother's Day ended the same way. She sat alone on the old wooden porch, watching the empty road, waiting, still believing that one day, her son would come home. New York City, October, 1986. The operating room was silent except for the steady rhythm of the heart monitor. Dr. David Carter carefully removed his surgical gloves after completing another successful open heart surgery. The medical team applauded quietly. "You did it again, doctor," a young nurse said with admiration. David forced a tired smile. Saving lives had become routine. But the success everyone admired had slowly stolen something far more precious: time. As he walked into the empty hallway, his pager vibrated. Then his office phone began ringing. His secretary hurried toward him. "Dr. Carter, there's an urgent call from Mississippi." David frowned. Mississippi? No one from home ever called the hospital. He picked up the phone. "Hello." A familiar elderly voice answered. "David, it's Evelyn." Mrs. Evelyn Johnson had lived next door to Margaret for almost 30 years. Her voice was trembling. "Your mother collapsed this morning." David's heart skipped a beat. "What happened?" "The doctor says her heart is failing." He leaned against the wall. No, I talked to her 2 weeks ago. She sounded fine. Evelyn sighed softly. She didn't want you to worry. The hallway suddenly felt colder. David whispered, "Is she dying?" There was a painful silence. Then came the answer he never wanted to hear. "She keeps asking for you." Nearly 1,000 miles away, Margaret Carter lay quietly in the small county hospital. It wasn't the modern hospital where her son worked. There were no expensive machines. No famous surgeons. Only a simple room with white walls and an old wooden chair beside her bed. The nurse adjusted her blanket. "Mrs. Carter, would you like me to call your son again?" Margaret smiled weakly. "He'll come." The nurse gently squeezed her hand. "You really believe that?" A mother always believes. She slowly looked toward the window. Outside, autumn leaves danced in the wind. Her thoughts drifted back to the day David boarded the bus for New York. She remembered waving until she could no longer see him. She had whispered, "Don't forget home." For 40 years, she never stopped waiting. Back in New York, David canceled every appointment. His colleagues watched in confusion. "Doctor, tomorrow's surgeries. Cancel them. The conference in Boston. Cancel it. The television interview. I said cancel everything." For the first time in years, nothing mattered except getting home. He rushed to the airport. The departure board flashed in bright red letters. All flights to Jackson, Mississippi, canceled. A powerful storm was moving across the southern states. David stared at the screen in disbelief. "No." He ran to the airline counter. "There has to be another flight." The employee shook her head. "I'm sorry, sir. The weather has grounded every plane." David's voice cracked. "My mother is dying. I have to get there." The woman lowered her eyes. "I wish I could help." Without another word, David sprinted toward the parking garage. He climbed into his black sedan and pointed it south. More than 1,200 miles separated him from home. He didn't care. He drove through the night. Hour after hour. State after state. The farther south he traveled, the heavier the rain became. Thunder shook the sky. Lightning illuminated the empty highway. As the windshield wipers struggled against the storm, memories flooded back. He remembered his mother's worn hands packing his lunch in a brown paper bag. He remembered her walking miles just to buy him a second-hand science book. He remembered the winters when she stitched holes in his only coat because she couldn't afford a new one. Tears blurred his vision. "I should have come home. I should have come sooner." Just before sunrise, traffic came to a complete stop. A massive freight truck had overturned on a narrow bridge. Police cars blocked the road. David jumped out of his car and ran toward the barricade. "My mother is dying. I have to get through." The state trooper looked at the raging river beneath the bridge. "I'm sorry. The bridge isn't safe. No one crosses." David looked beyond the barricade. Home was only a few miles away. So close, yet impossibly far. His eyes filled with tears. Then he looked toward the old country road disappearing into the forest. Without another word, he left his car behind and started running through the storm. Cold rain soaked David Carter's clothes as he ran through the muddy country road. Every breath burned. His legs screamed in pain. But he refused to stop. The road he had walked as a little boy now seemed endless. The old oak tree finally appeared through the morning fog. Then, the familiar white farmhouse. It looked exactly as he remembered. The wooden porch, the rocking chair, the little garden his mother had planted years ago. Everything was the same, except one thing. The porch was empty. David's heart pounded. No. He sprinted toward the front door. It stood slightly open. Inside, the house was silent. The silence frightened him more than the storm outside. "Mom." No answer. He slowly walked toward the bedroom. Mrs. Evelyn stood outside the door. Her eyes were red from crying. She gently touched David's shoulder. "She's still with us. But she's very weak." David nodded. His hands trembled as he pushed the door open. Margaret Carter lay peacefully beneath a thin white blanket. Her breathing was slow, weak. Every breath seemed like a battle. Beside her bed rested a small wooden box she had kept for decades. David fell to his knees. He took her fragile hand into both of his. "Mom." His voice broke. "I'm here." For several long seconds, nothing happened. Then, Margaret's fingers moved ever so slightly. Her eyelids slowly opened. Her cloudy brown eyes searched the room. When they found David, a gentle smile appeared on her face. "You came." David burst into tears. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Mom. I should have come years ago. I kept telling myself there would always be another Christmas. Another birthday. Another Mother's Day. I was wrong. Margaret softly squeezed his hand. A mother's heart never counts the days. It only waits. David lowered his head onto the bed. I forgot what mattered. I chased success. I won awards. I saved strangers. But I left the person who saved me. Margaret gently stroked his hair. You became exactly the man I prayed for. I was never disappointed. Those words shattered him. He cried harder than he ever had as a child. Margaret slowly looked toward the old wooden box. Open it. David carefully lifted the lid. Inside was a faded black and white photograph. It showed a young Margaret carrying 10-year-old David on her shoulders through a cotton field. Underneath the photograph lay a tiny wooden toy truck. David smiled through tears. I remember this. You carved it yourself. Margaret nodded weakly. There is one more thing. At the bottom of the box rested an unopened envelope. Across the front were 4 simple words. For my son. David unfolded the letter. His hands shook so badly he could barely read. My dearest David, if these words find you, it means God answered my final prayer. Never blame yourself for leaving Mississippi. I wanted you to fly farther than I ever could. Every life you saved became another reason for me to thank God. People often asked if I felt lonely. Sometimes. I did. But love has never been measured by distance. A mother's love travels farther than any road. Promise me something. Don't spend your life mourning the days we lost. Spend the rest of your life giving people hope. Visit your family. Love your children. Forgive quickly. Never wait too long to come home. Because tomorrow belongs to God. Today belongs to us. And remember, no matter how far you traveled, you were always my little boy. Forever proud of you, Mom. The letter slipped from David's hands. He leaned forward and gently hugged his mother. I love you. I always loved you. Margaret smiled peacefully. I know. Those were the last words she ever spoke. Her hand slowly slipped from his shoulder. The room became perfectly still. Rain continued falling outside. But inside, a mother's long wait had finally ended. 1 year later, Mississippi, 1987. The old Carter farmhouse was gone. Time had worn away its wooden walls, but not the memories that had lived inside them. In its place stood a modest red brick building with white columns and a small American flag gently waving in the morning breeze. Above the entrance was a wooden sign that read, Margaret Carter Community Health Center. Healing begins with love. Dozens of local families waited patiently outside. Many had never been able to afford proper medical care. Now, every patient who walked through those doors was treated free of charge. No one was turned away. Not because they could pay, but because someone had once sacrificed everything for a little boy's future. Every morning before sunrise, David Carter arrived before anyone else. He unlocked the front door himself. He walked through the quiet halls until he reached one special place. A single portrait hung on the wall. It showed Margaret Carter smiling in her faded blue headscarf, standing proudly beside a cotton field where she had spent most of her life. Fresh white lilies rested beneath the photograph. David gently touched the frame. Good morning, Mom. I hope I'm making you proud. He smiled. For the first time in many years. His smile was genuine. Word about the free clinic spread across Mississippi. Poor farmers, single mothers, retired veterans, children from forgotten towns. They all came seeking help. One rainy afternoon, a frightened little boy was rushed into the clinic. His mother held him tightly. I'm sorry. I don't have insurance. I can't pay. David knelt beside her. He remembered another frightened mother. Many years ago. He smiled softly. You don't owe me anything. Your child comes first. The woman burst into tears. Exactly as Margaret would have. That evening, David returned to the small cemetery overlooking the cotton fields. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and gold. He placed fresh flowers on his mother's grave. For a long time, he said nothing. Finally, he spoke. You were right. Success isn't measured by awards. It's measured by the lives we touch. A gentle breeze moved through the trees. David looked toward the endless fields where Margaret had once worked from sunrise until sunset. In his heart, he could almost hear her voice. They can lock doors, David, but they can't lock your mind. Those words had carried him through racism, through poverty, through loneliness, and finally, back home. Before leaving, David removed something from his coat pocket. It was the tiny wooden toy truck his mother had carved for him when he was a little boy. He placed it carefully beside her gravestone. "I don't need this anymore. You already carried me farther than I ever dreamed." Tears filled his eyes. But this time, they weren't tears of regret. They were tears of gratitude. Years later, the Margaret Carter Community Health Center became one of the most respected charitable clinics in the state. Thousands of families received care. Hundreds of young African American students earned medical scholarships funded by the clinic. Each scholarship carried the same message: dream beyond your circumstances. Never forget where you came from. Margaret Carter never became famous. Her name never appeared in history books. She never stood on a stage. She never received awards. Yet her sacrifice changed countless lives through the sun she never stopped believing in. Sometimes, the greatest heroes are not remembered because the world saw them. They are remembered because one life they touched went on to change thousands more. Final message: if your parents are still alive, don't wait for a better day. Don't wait until you're less busy. Don't wait until success finally gives you free time. Pick up the phone. Visit them. Tell them you love them. Because one day, the road home may still be there. But the person waiting at the end of it may not. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Unshackled Histories for more powerful stories inspired by the resilience, sacrifice, and enduring legacy of ordinary people whose lives changed history in extraordinary ways.